I'm going to show you how to send files, whether that's just regular audio files or stems, to a mixing engineer. Here is the Logic production session. Nothing has changed since I finished producing this song last week. It's called Bad Goodbye. It's for my side project called Palma. It's going to be released in January of next year on a European label. Just a little bit of a preview so you know where I'm coming from. Feel free to skip if you don't want to listen to the preview.
My friends, they told me to stay. They told me to run and stay far away. And I try to fix myself from being this way, but every time I fall I come out okay. So this time we gotta get it right. I've waited hours for you to reply. Don't leave me hanging out here high and dry, 'cause I can't take another bad goodbye.
One thing you can do here is start a new project alternative, file, project alternative, new alternative, and then you can go like mix files or something. So let's start exporting these files now. You can start here going file, export, and then do all tracks as audio files. I like to do one track at a time because some tracks I like to have some of the plugins on it. Some tracks I don't want any plugins. Let's start with the drums. I'm going to export the kick with the plugins on it because I like how the kick sounds within my production. The shortcut to export a track, which you're going to want to know, is Command E. So just have the track highlighted and then go Command E. I'll start by going down to my Palma folder that I have here, and then I will go to Bad Goodbye, which is the song title, and I'll go down here to New Folder and then say Bad Goodbye. Mix files. Create. And inside this Bad Goodbye mix files, I'm going to create a new folder just to give it even more organized and say drums. So now my kick is going to be saved in this drum folder. I'm not going to bypass the effects. I don't really need the audio tail. I don't have any automation. That's good to check. Make sure you check if there's automation. I know for a fact I don't have automation, so that's okay. Overload protection only. Here's where you can put the pattern of your file name. And I usually just put the track name, to be honest, because I name my track what it is, and that's what it's going to look like, kick.wave. So now I'm ready to export. All I have to do is export, and that's going to go through and export that track to that specific folder. Then I will literally go through all these drums, elements, and do the same thing. But I'm asking myself before I export it, do I want the plugins to be baked into the audio or not? If I want them baked in, then I make sure not to have this checked. I do that for some, so I'll get into it when that comes up. Bass, Command E. I will go up a folder level to my Bad Goodbye mix files again, and I'll create a new folder, bass. You could also put it in all the one folder of Bad Goodbye mix files. That's my personal preference. I have some sidechain compression on the bass. I have an EQ and a reverb. What I'm going to do is actually take the side compression off because I want the mixing engineer to have that flexibility on the bass. And I'm going to take the reverb off. So I'm only going to keep the Pultec EQ on because I want the EQ that I've done. So I'll do Command E, and I'll make sure not to bypass the effects because I want that EQ in there, right? It's not going to include this compressor and this Valhalla Room reverb because those are turned off. So the other way is actually just turning the plugins off if you don't want them baked in. Piano, I do the same thing. I would take the reverb off unless you really like that reverb. It's fine to leave it on. The lead vocal is something that I would take all my plugins off and give a dry vocal and a wet vocal as a reference. So I would do Command E, and since I turned them all off, I can have them bypassed. I could also do something like this. Command E, bypass effect plugins, go up to here to my mix files, have a new folder, call it vocals, because I'm going to have background vocals and things like that. And then I will have a custom name here going dry, lead vocal dry. Now I have a dry vocal, and then I'm going to want to do the same thing, Command E, but take this off so it will be a wet vocal. So I'll just say I can actually do custom wet. It's always good to have communication with the person you're sending the files to and tell them, I sent you all the files and I sent you a lead vox dry and a lead vox wet. So you would export that through. Notice how when it's wet, it's going to take so much more time to export than it was dry. And so that's a good signal if you're looking at your Logic screen here and it's taking a long time to export. Well, you're probably baking those plugins to your export because the computer's having to actually run all those plugins and put them into the audio signal. Here's the thing. You have to decide on some tracks you're going to have bus sends, right? For example, on the lead vox track, I have a delay, a lead vocal delay. For me, it's a production thing, and I want that to be in the production. As a producer, I'm saying this is an instrument itself. So I'm going to actually export this delay as audio as well with the plugins on it. So Command E, and I will not bypass the plugins. And I could put it in vocals and have a custom name for it. I could put it in a sends folder. This is all subjective. The most important thing there is just to communicate what you're sending to the mix engineer. For me, I'll put it on like a lead vocal delay, and I would put it in the vocals track. I always go through the folder afterwards and make sure the names are all cleaned up because I'm going to have to clean that up later. Let's continue on where I have 2 harmony tracks, 1 pan left, 1 pan right. And I like the processing that I've done on the bus track itself here. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm actually going to do a mix down of both those 2 tracks into one that includes the panning. So the mixer is going to get a stereo track where it's going to be one audio track, but it's going to be super wide. So what I'll do here is instead of doing Command D on both of these tracks, I'm going to go up to the pre-harmonies bus summing stack and go Command E. I'm going to include the volume and pan automation. This is super important, so it actually includes those pans. And I will not bypass the effects because I want the effects. And then I will take that custom off and just do pre-harmonies, and I would export. Same thing goes for the synths. Like if you really like the way these synths sound as a group because of the processing you've done on the bus, you could export the bus and give that track to the mixer. Or if you're like, you know what, this was just kind of a production thing I was working on, I'm open to seeing how the mixer lays out these 3 tracks individually in the mix, then you can send these 3 tracks individually. You right now as the producer have control of how you want your mix to sound in a way because you're saying like, I want this track to sound like this before it hits even the mixer. And you can see how I have important buses in the session, right? They're not just hidden. Like this bus 12 here is the electric delay, which is seen in the session. So that's another, if you haven't seen this before, it's often a good reminder to do that, to put your buses in the session as tracks so you can treat them as they are individual tracks, which they are, but also it's a good reminder when you're exporting files for mix not to forget them. Some things you'll want to keep in mind to bypass are usually like heavy compression, like side chain compression. That's good to have the mixer's opinion on that because they'll likely want you to take any sidechain compression off so they can work with it unless it's more of a production thing. Heavy EQs, like if you're doing real big cuts on things, leave that up to the mixer because that's their job to really work with the EQs. So when that's done, go to a Finder window, find your mix files, which are right here. Right click, compress. Wait till that compresses, upload it to Dropbox, Google, whatever, bounce out a WAV version of your produced version of your song. Here's where I see the mix going. That's really helpful to a mixer to be like, this is what I kind of want to sound like. Here's a video on how to record and release cover songs. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video.
I remember blue lights, 5 years old in the backseat, counting snowflakes.